Speaking of live, let's go now to the great Kari Lake, who, of course, Kari appointed by President Trump to the Voice of America there in Washington, D.C. Congratulations on that. Your thoughts on the fact that we're 4 days away from what we've been waiting for, President Trump back in the White House?
Well, I'm ecstatic about it, and I believe that the majority of Americans are ecstatic about it as well. I'm right here in Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, I'm just a couple of blocks from the White House right now, and they're getting the city ready. There's going to be a ton of security. I was just talking to a man who works at one of the hotels around here, and he's worked here for a number of years. As a matter of fact, he said more than a decade, decades, I should say. And he said he's never seen this type of security. So they want to make sure everyone's safe and secure. They don't want people to have concerns about that. And it's going to be a cold day. People are going to have to bundle up. But I'm telling you, the love that the American people have for President Trump, it could be 50 below. And it could be snowing, and the people are going to show up. They've waited a long time. We've been through a very difficult 4 years under Joe Biden. Really a horrible administration running our country into the ground in many ways, with a wide open border. Of course, hailing from Arizona, we've seen the terrible ramifications of an open border, from the fentanyl crisis taking the lives of hundreds of thousands of amazing Americans, to the border being open and millions of people, tens of millions, pouring in illegally, many of whom have caused serious trouble, some of whom have even killed Americans. So the American people are ready for a turnaround, and that is going to come on January 20th at 12:01. And this is going to be an incredible celebration of patriotic Americans we're going to be huddled and bundled together, ready to watch the president take the oath of office for a second time and to help start turning things around. I'm ecstatic about it. Happy to be here in Washington, ready to get to work to help make this country great again. And it's just a really great feeling knowing that in just a few short days, we're going to have a new administration and get America on the right path again.
And Kari, with your extensive experience in media and also dealing with the media, so your thoughts right now on the fact that we know that a lot of people are going to be watching this, and can you talk to us about the fork in the road, that we finally made the right turn and we're going in the right direction for our country? Is that also having a media landscape shift as well?
I think the media's had to learn some difficult lessons, and hopefully they have, because we look at corporate media, the mainstream media, we look at their viewership, their subscriptions, and they have I thought they hit rock bottom 4 or 5 years ago, but they've managed to go about 1,000 floors even further down. And they're paying for it with the loss of subscriptions, the loss of viewership. I think I saw recently the Washington Post has some of the lowest readership in subscriptions and clicks that they've ever seen in the history of that paper. And so it's been a lesson for them. The American people do not want corporate media pushing an agenda and pushing a false narrative. They want the truth, and they want this administration, which is going to be incredibly consequential. We know there's going to be a lot that's happening over the next 4 years, and we want to see it covered fairly. I think President Trump, just like myself and probably you've been a journalist for a number of years. We just want to see fair and accurate coverage. There's going to be consequential things happening in the next 4 years that affect every American, that affect the world, that will bring us peace and prosperity. And we're tired of a few people in the media pushing their narrative, pushing their activism, and lying to the American people and trying to tear down a very patriotic president, Donald J. Trump. So we're looking forward, hopefully, that they've learned some lessons and they're going to start covering this administration in a fair, journalistic, fair way.
And as you know, the 24/7 news cycle, when we both worked in mainstream media, usually it's always the bad news that's leading. But it seems like when President Trump takes the oath of office on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, it's going to kick into high gear, but it's going to be positive things happening to our country. I mean, do you feel that 3 days right after the inauguration, how many things will be happening for our nation?
I think in the 3 hours after inauguration, there's going to be a lot happening. I believe that there'll be some executive orders signed, and President Trump is going to get right to work. I mean, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance that goes on, and it's historic, and we love to see it. But I think he's chomping at the bit to get to work and start turning things around. And I want to see the media cover that fairly. I'm working to get over to become the director of Voice of America. We're going to cover this administration fairly. And there's going to be things that are happening that if we allow the media, the as fake news as President Trump called it, the corporate media, mainstream media with their left agenda, in many cases anti-American agenda, if we allow them to continue to cover President Trump, the character assassination they've done, trying to denigrate this administration with so many people coming in from outside of Washington, D.C., leaving their lives behind, many people who've been incredibly successful in their own endeavors, whether it was in business or in whatever profession they had, coming and leaving all of that behind to serve this country and serve this administration. And so I want to see it covered fairly. We're going to be pushing policies such as the deportation of people who've come here illegally. And the mainstream media is set to probably cover that to make America look horrible, when in fact, the people who've come here illegally have done wrong. And we're going to be watching as they're being sent home. We'll be seeing millions of homecomings around the globe as people go back to the 170 different countries that they poured in from under Joe Biden and under his administration, where the borders were left wide open, and he basically invited the entire world to come in unvetted. So there's going to be a lot of work to do. It's going to be, I think, incredibly positive for the American people, resulting in peace and prosperity, safety and security once again in this country. And I'm looking forward to it. Not only the first 3 hours and the first 3 or 4 days, but the first 3 and 4 years are going to be consequential. And I believe the world is waiting and watching and excited for what's about to happen. We're already seeing some of the wars and the violence and the strife start to quell and come down as people anticipate a true, strong leader in Donald J. Trump coming into the White House and starting to lead once again and help lead the world out of this darkness.
Yeah, his presidential portrait alone shows that he means business. Did you get to see it?
I did. I thought it was great. The first term, he had a big smile on his face. This one, he's saying, yeah, I know a little bit more, a lot more about Washington. I know a lot more about people who've stabbed me in the back. And I'm ready to go in, and we're not going to have the same mistakes we had the first time, which were honest mistakes from somebody who came in not being part of the swamp. And he looks like he's ready for business. And while I believe President Trump is not only one of the most patriotic people that has ever walked this country's wonderful streets, he's also one of the toughest people. And while he's kind and generous, when he's crossed and when he's been done wrong, I think he can be one of the most tough people. We know he's a tough negotiator. It's exactly what we're going to need going into the next 4 years. I would not want to cross the man, especially if you've been one of those people who stabbed him in the back before, because he doesn't want those people around him anymore. He wants people who have the single focus of making this country great again, ensuring safety and security for the American people, bringing peace and prosperity back to this great land. And frankly, that'll end up bringing peace and prosperity back to the whole world.
Exactly. So Teflon Don, definitely a right-fitted name for President Trump. Kari, I want to ask you about Voice of America, your role there specifically, what you'll be doing. When is day one for you? But also, will you be in the press briefings at the White House with the fake news? I can't wait to see something like that, Kari.
Well, maybe one of these days I'll join in over there and just visit. But there's a correspondents who actually work in the press room, and I'm expecting absolute professionalism from everybody at Voice of America to cover this administration with the utmost professionalism. It is Voice of America, and we need to cover America and what America stands for, and freedom and liberty. We're sending that message around the globe. Our viewership is global. And we want to make sure that people around the world understand what America's all about. Everyone wants to see what this administration is going to do, whether you love President Trump or you don't. He is literally, in some ways, the center of the universe when it comes to what's happening in the news. And every country is waiting with bated breath to see what will happen. And want to make sure that Voice of America is truly covering America and with top journalistic standards. So I'm looking forward to getting in there. There's going to be a little bit of a process to get in. It won't be on day one. I wish it was at 12:01 on the 20th, but it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm a patient woman, but I'm also gunning to get ready. I'm ready to get in there and start working.
I have a couple more questions for you. First, how important is public perception, the narrative, and the court of public opinion in politics and in life?
On what subject? Everything?
Everything. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that whether it's the Democrat leadership, how they're messaging, they're sharing with the people to kind of guide a way of that they want to vote or that kind of thing. So I'm just asking, just in general about that, the narrative that we've seen from the mainstream media has been such from lying perspectives. How important just is it at that 30,000-foot view?
Well, I mean, you can look at some of the activists in the left's movement, people like George Soros, who has a complete web of control over many aspects of the left, from the messaging to fundraising to shifting money into various lawfare organizations, and they are all in lockstep. And that's not really the American way. The American way is free thought and freedom of expression, freedom of speech. In some ways, though, I think that we need to get a better, the America First movement needs to get better on messaging and making sure that we are on message. And we've got one of the greatest messengers of all time in President Trump. They've never seen anybody like it. He knows how to connect with the American people. He knows how to connect with the world. And we need to make sure that we are also, in some ways, in lockstep, covering what is happening in this administration that will be so consequential to taking all of the aspects from our economy and the troubles we're having in our economy, to the border, to crime, to policies that affect our young people, our families, our education. And we need to make sure that we are all pushing the message of this is going to work to make America better. So I'm really curious how the media will cover this. Have they learned anything from the past 4 years? Have they learned anything from the past election? That the American people, the vast majority, want to put our country first. I don't see this so much as Democrat versus Republican. I really don't. I see this as pro-America, America first versus what was a very slippery slope into, in some ways, communism, Marxism, socialism. And so the question is, were we as a country going to go into socialism and communism, and globalism, or are we going to maintain our sovereignty and be an incredible country where we put the American people first, we put the American people's safety and security first? And the voters decided. They've elected Donald J. Trump. There's a majority, a Republican majority, a pro-America majority here in Washington, D.C. And I'm curious how the media will cover that and see if they've learned their lesson, that the American people are so tired of this absolute agenda being forced down our throats. And I'm looking forward to seeing how things change on January 20th.
What's great is at VOA here at Right Side and conservative media is the media reform that could happen, the common sense reporting instead of all of those lies, to your point, Kari. The one last question I have for you. You're moving from the Grand Canyon State in Arizona, really hot, to Washington, D.C., a little bit of a change for you. What is that like for you personally, Kari?
I'm freezing. As a matter of fact, we came in into the warmth about an hour ago, and I still haven't warmed up. But I hail from the great state of Iowa, and I grew up there. So I was probably about as cold as it gets in the winter, and you just need to get back to remembering to dress warm and all of that. So we're going to be prepared. We'll bundle up. Arizona is an absolutely beautiful state. I think it's one of the most beautiful places in the whole world. But this next few years is going to be a mission of getting to work, helping to make our country great. So whether there's strife and struggle and cold weather and snow and rain, and I'm sure there'll be some deep state swampy types that are trying to throw landmines in my way, I'm prepared for it, and I'm strong. I'm a strong woman. I've been through a lot in the past 4 years. I think I've proven that I'm strong, that I love this country, and I want to do everything to put our country first.
Teflon Kari, thank you so much for joining us here at Right
Even
Side
if that means I'm
Broadcasting.
freezing.
Yeah, no, exactly. Kari Lake, thank you so much for joining us here at Right Side. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So there you go, the great Kari Lake in Washington, D.C., getting ready to watch the inauguration and to be there in the nation's capital. Of course, we know it's pretty swampy there, but now that President Trump is returning and bringing a great cabinet with him, the swamp is going to get drained.